There we go. We're going to let Albert do a little bit of opening and a welcoming to you, Omar, and then it'll be over to you if that works for everyone. Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone for being here.
It's it's so good to have you here with us tonight, Omar. We're looking forward to your comments and I guess what we are really hoping for is that you recognize or see how supportive we are of the Palestinian cause. We're all about free Palestine, and we're against genocide, and we we just we think about the Palestinians each and every day. I know I do a daily prayer, and it's always includes the people of Gaza, especially the children, but all the people there that are the innocent people that are being slaughtered every day and starving to death. And I want to say that for me, I see Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet as vampires whose lust for innocent Palestinian blood is something that will never be satisfied. They are determined and so dedicated to wiping out Palestine off the face of the earth, and we feel so helpless. The people like ourselves who are trying in so many ways to do something about it. Um, I I think about our world leaders and how cowardly they are, and why they're putting the interest of a murderers like that instead of the flag that they say represents freedom and democracy and welcoming and safety and all these good things, and yet they are standing in solidarity with the murderers in Israel. The I want to think about what Netanyahu said in 2023. I think it was in November, maybe it was late November in 2023, and he made a statement to the world saying that we are weeks, not months, away from achieving our goals in Gaza, he said. And now it's almost 2 years since then, and they're still killing. And the propaganda is still out there. I heard Trump a couple of days ago say to reporters that he saw the evidence. He says, I wish I didn't, but he said he saw the babies cut up into 40 pieces, and babies put into ovens, and then the ovens turned on. So here we have the President of the United States promoting that falsehoods like that, and you wonder. I know he doesn't believe it, but he's saying it so that people in the world who uh, who respect him will believe it just because he's saying it. The I just it's I believe in prayer, and I would like for people to at least pray that things are going to change for the better soon, before Palestine is before they're all dead. Because if warmongers in Israel have their way, they they surely will be. They'll all be dead. And I've said it before that, you know, I worked, my trade was a bricklayer and stonemason. And I've told people, you know, that if I was a young man again, I would volunteer at least 6 months, maybe a year out of my life to go to Gaza and help rebuild it. Uh, you know, without, you know, I do that as a volunteer. And I would be thinking that's the least I could do as a human being is to help the people of Palestine rebuild after the murderers from Israel leave them alone. We, I don't know. I hope this conversation we're going to have tonight is going to answer some questions about the propaganda and what we could do. You know, I mentioned the other day that my great belief in my spiritual domain is that nobody escapes justice. Netanyahu and his war cabinet and the killers in the IDF, they might get away with it in this physical world, but they're not going to get away with it in the spiritual one. Nobody gets away with killing anybody, but especially babies and children. It's so inhumane. And they keep promoting that propaganda about 40 babies hanging and claiming the Hamas fighters did that. I don't know. I'd like to hear your comments about the propaganda and whatever else you feel you need to share with us. And I guess that's all I could say for now. I do have more to say, but we'll let you do some talking now, Omar. Make which.
Thanks, Albert. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm honored to be here with all of you to just have this wonderful chat. Although always speaking about Palestine and the situation in the Gaza Strip, it's kind of like a heavy subject. We all know that this is, even when we go to demonstrations, it's a heavy subject. And for me, for someone who has been doing it for the past 2 years, even before when I first arrived here in 2014, it is a heavy subject. But I think the way how can we make it, we can't really make it very interesting or fun because that's not a fun subject, but we can always seek towards making it inspiring, a learning for all of us, because all of us, we learn all the time, whether you're 5, 15, 20, 60 years old, we're always learning. And since I came here, I've been learning since day one, and I'm still learning. I've been learning from people, and people have been learning from me. Some just came up like last year saying, I've been learning from you for many years, and I'm learning from people. And I think those discussions would be more exciting and interesting when we all try to think and brainstorm on not only the impact on us, but also as Albert mentioned, is what can we do next? I think from our perspective, and many people here, mainly in Canada, who have never maybe went and voted for any party or have been thinking that voting is not a thing or never knew, for example, the name of their members of parliament. I think what we have all learned from this is that, for example, our collective and individual actions can actually lead into something. And this is something that we've been all hearing is every one of us have the ability to speak to their members of parliament. And this is something that I've actually been very surprised here in Canada when I first arrived. People try to stay away from politics. People always try to not talk politics. Many of my friends when I first arrived don't even vote on election. It's funny because when I was living in Europe for a couple of years or less than that, and I go to Italy, I was very young at that time, but you see all these Italians having their coffee and fighting over politics, and they're always fighting and they're always speaking politics. It's the same thing in Palestine. In Palestine, you go and you walk in the street and you'll see some children even smoking cigarettes on the side of the curve of the street, talking about politics. And many of them, you would be surprised that they're even talking about different concepts about socialism, and they would talk about World War One, and those are just like kids. It's very interesting here seeing the differences on how people mindset. But at the same time, I don't think it is wrong to not talk about politics, but I think it's a disastrous situation to not talk about politics. It is very also I understand that many Canadians they like to have fun and this whole fun and entertainment culture in our North American culture, which is mainly in Canada, the passive aggressiveness way of being polite, but also not to make the other person feel uncomfortable. I find that very extremely annoying, to be honest, especially for someone like me who's super direct. Both my parents speak Russian because they lived in Russia for a little bit and they speak different languages. So I remember the first time I was assigned into a group assignment during my MBA program. I made three of my six people assignment group cry because I was too direct in the way how I speak. And that was week one. They even complained to the dean about my behavior. But I think it's just the directiveness on how we speak in our language, and it's a very high context language. The same thing with the Russian language I discovered, and I also saw that, for example, when I was in Germany. This is how German talks. It's just like it's very direct, which all plays under that fact that Canadians they like to do the washy-washy dancing, the dance language on trying to not hurt the other, which is something I respect. But I think hurting the other does not mean that we should be passive aggressive in a very vague way on expressing ourselves. And that all plays into why we don't talk politics. Although it is not always a fun situation when you are when you are making the other person arguing with you. But I think one of the most things that us Canadians have learned in the last 2 years, any individual, is that many people they broke this chain of just not talking about politics. I've heard from many friends of mine who are therapists, counselors, that now they are in their own counseling firm, which is the last firm you would imagine would talks about politics, that they are talking, okay, you know what, maybe we should talk about how can we support Palestinians, and they start bringing those words about genocide, things like that. I mean, it is money for sure, but also we are breaking walls and we are shifting people's mindset mainly in countries like Canada, mainly in our society that is always trying not to make the other person feel uncomfortable. And that is something that we have accomplished in our day-to-day life. For the first time, I've been seeing people saying, I've never gone into a demonstration in my life. And I just find myself marching in so-called Vancouver downtown, being bravely open of saying it's an unceded territory with from the depth of my heart. I think this is a huge thing. And what I like seeing, especially for someone who have studied cultures and how different cultures impact other cultures, is how much a small spot like the Gaza Strip did not only unmask the West, but also made people be more brave. And it filtered. I think all of us, we have filtered too many people from our own circles and even from the closest circle. So this is something positive. But at the same time, what I want to emphasize here is that all of us, as all of us, we have the privilege. I was able to do my first time electing a politician in my whole life on the age of 35 last year when I first voted in my whole life. And I think this privilege many Canadians here takes it for granted, right? Um, when I was able to see people just calling an MP and making an impact. For example, when we started first advocating about the family reunification policy, and this was back in November, December in 2023, not even 2024. We've seen politicians move in the quickest way I have ever seen in my life, and I have never seen politicians actually sweat when they talk. And I think the pressure was very big from different individuals that made them rush to make a policy happen, although they should have done it months in advance. But it made a big change. And most importantly, what I would love to hear from people and actually understand, because what many grassroots organizations and movements and people have been doing recently is we've been becoming all of us as like a group, and we end up marching the same people in the street and tap each other, and which is not the right way of doing things in general, because if you want to grow a movement and make more of an impact, you need to do an outreach. So I think what we can all try to understand is how can we outreach more people, which is tiring and exhausting because people don't want to have more assignments and brainstorming about this matter. But my main two questions here is what are the two things that you've learned? And I do understand that many people will talk about resilient of the Palestinians, but I also want to say that this resilient, we're not resilient. Actually, I'm not resilient. I had no option. When I talk about with my brother and my sister in the Gaza Strip, they're not resilient. We're not heroes. I don't have a superpower. I just have no option to just to continue doing. So I I actually find it very offensive when people talk about us being resilient, that we have to always rebuild our lives from scratch over and over again. It's like this is our main job. It's like we can't just have the privilege of just like not keep rebuilding our lives, which is something that makes me really angry. But I want to understand from people what else actually made them this cause impacted them on their level in their circle and also on day to day, because I don't think many of us have witnessed a genocide on a 4K on this modern century. But most of us is now, even when we don't want to think about the Gaza Strip or have empathy towards Palestinians, I think many of us are wondering if we are going to have a children when in a world that has no order and no law and no order and no law. And I have heard it from many of my friends that they have been saying, I don't know if I actually what kind of a brutal world that we're living at. And those are a huge amount of people, but also they got this awareness saying if it's happening in Gaza, even if they don't have any empathy, well, this means it can happen to any of us. So we're back now to square one, where it's only the law of power. It's the law of jungle, um, of whoever can kill or eliminate anyone. So that would be something that would maybe would we can learn from each other and just listen on maybe in a very short note, what impact did this thing did to all of us?
Yeah, okay. For me, I know that what all this has proven to me is that humanity is hanging on by a thread in this world. Whenever people of the world can see the live film footage of daily massacres of children, and it doesn't bother them. They don't care. And what it tells me is that where's the humanity? But I'd like to hear your comments about propaganda. I mean, they say 40 babies were hung by the neck. They say babies were put in the oven and babies were chopped up into pieces. Like, who's putting that out there? And who is what's the what does a person say about that to people who believe it?
I think Albert answering a question, and I've been to many arguments. Um, Listen, you will never. I would save myself the time and not argue with racists. Why would I say racist? Is because there hasn't been no human being on this world did not watch Palestinians die. There is no way that people are this blind, um, that they don't see and know the fact. I'm actually tired. I don't even argue with people anymore. I just walk. I just walk away. And I was like, yeah, whatever, man. Yeah, burned alive, fine, bye. Like whatever they say. We have passed those arguments a year and a half ago, even more than that, even like 2 years ago. I think the second week that they got debunked by many organizations and human rights, those arguments are gone. I don't, I think even keep thinking or talking about those arguments is very offensive because it brings us to the square one of where we are rather than actually talking about um, what's next. And this is something, for example, you've seen that it has been like that's kind of the tactic that journalists are bringing, like Piers Morgan and other people on trying to make us get lost on the details on claims that are completely unfalse, but also that they have been completely proven multiple times that they are wrong. So I don't even bother my mind or my head responding to those claims in any way. I actually just move on. But those are, if anyone understand 101 tactics on journalism, they would understand the fact on how after every massacre, the media that is mostly Zionist media will come and 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 throw a little detailed story with things that doesn't make any sense to get people more distracted. And that has been the cause and the thing since day one. We are all living in a world that is mainly in North America, and I want to be very specific here, North America, and mainly Canada and the US, mainly Canada, where everything around us is mostly owned and controlled by one narrative and one organization or one side. I used to work in a company called the Press Reader. They are resellers of newspapers and magazines. They have the New York Times and Washington Post and all these different bullshit newspapers. And if you do a little investigation, you don't even need to be smart or a nuclear scientist. You would understand that all these organizations and all these newspapers are owned by almost the same party, same people. Um, which is sad because Canadians are smart, but I think they're not mind critical. Like they don't have the critical mindset to be very critical of what they hear. I think it's uh, also I'm struggling always with the idea that should I blame the regular Canadian of being, I can't say dumb to be honest because it's offensive, but to be having the lack of critical thinking. And the problem here, and to be more empathetic, is like, you know what, the public here has been raised their whole life on the programmed things that they can only see from one side. When I was living in Vancouver Island, maybe 95% of people from Vancouver Island, which is a little island, have never left the island. So how am I expecting these people to actually be able to understand other cultures and have critical thinking about things? The only thing that they would read or see is this thing that has been embedded in the subconscious while growing up, that has been fed by all these media. If one of the one of the funniest things that actually made me feel outraged is if you have watched this RCMP show that many young people have watched, this wonderful hero RCMP show. Do you know what I'm talking about? If anyone knows, there's this RCMP good-looking guy that has been playing since the early 90s. And my generation here in Canada, most of the girls and guys that I've seen, they grew up watching this RCMP hero who has been acting like that good-looking man. Uh, and the question that I asked myself was like, okay, if a regular Canadian would understand the definition and why Canada made the RCMP, like what is the reasoning behind creating an RCMP office or an RCMP institution. From A to Z, it's a disgusting idea to even read it. Like they've been created. Like if you did not educate yourself and you're very young or naive, you would fall in love with, the example, the idea of RCMP, but you would not be that critical of understanding that it was created and designed by Canada to oppress the indigenous in many document like that. That was the main reason, to keep them on the land, and those who leave, they lose their status. So we all know the story if you have it. But the funniest part is, like, when I started dating people here, and mainly in Vancouver Island and Vancouver, and you know, all these girls and even guys, that they have this fantasy about the RCMP military guy, and but none of them have thought on what this whole idea came from, or they don't even, so they're not even aware of their own history. How would they even understand cultures and people way beyond? But so the question, back to the question, should we blame those people who are not having critical thinking or did not educate themselves? For me, the struggle is like, blame them, don't blame them, you know, because first, that they are brainwashed and programmed from day one, you know, and it's also hard to detach from what you have been raised in your whole life. Even if your conscious mind is good, it's still embedded and rooted in your subconscious, which is controlling most of our decision making. Um, so back to your question, Albert, um, these type of people would be fed those narratives and just keep questioning it. I think it's too much of a hard job for me to argue with people, because the facts are just there. But those who are denying the facts, although they have been seeing them every day and every day, I can't say anything towards them, but they are racist. For them, it's fine for them to see a brown person getting killed and shot on TV. In their head, um, that the idea of an ethno supremacy in their head, as long as they're fine and their people is fine and this person is not white who is being killed, they don't care. And this is why, when I was working in companies, and in the company I'm working at, you would see CEOs talking about courage and saving the Ukrainians and employing them and this and this and that, and they were throwing the example of how to be a human. But um, then the war in Gaza happened, and the same CEO who was talking about being a good man, who's from Ireland, did not open his mouth about people being killed in Gaza. And I was like, and I was looking at him, was like, I understand the biases, but this is beyond biases. This is beyond being only biased. This is an embedded racism. And maybe he doesn't even know that he's racist, but you know, because he calls himself the good man, right? Um, so the question here that we need to ask is, what is, I don't want to say what's wrong with our brains, but how did we get into this era? How did we get into this level of being this blind? What else are we blind about? Forget about Gaza and Palestine. What else have we have been programmed on not seeing? Because if you are unable to, if you discover the fact that you've been blindsided the whole time and your brain is programmed in a certain way, then you don't know what you don't know. It's a big deal. You don't know a lot of things as a Canadian, right? As Canadians, we don't know a lot of things. I think people in North America don't know many things more than any other ethnicity or country in the world, because of the lack of diversification on how people get news. Although, if you go to any library, you would see a lot of books that talks about these things. So the question is it your fault that you're not educated on understanding different tactics, or is it actually not your fault? And that's a debatable subject. But I think people were suddenly awake. It made, because you know, it's an open call for people to just say, oh wow, this stuff can happen. Oh wow, you know. But you cannot argue with racist. Again, Albert, don't even waste your time.
I
Don't
don't,
Go ahead, Christopher.
yeah, I don't waste my time talking to a racist. It's energy is too precious to waste it on nonsense. The you know, the one of the facts is that Netanyahu killed the Hamas negotiators. So how do you talk peace whenever there's nobody at the other side of the table? You've killed them, and yeah, I just saw my daughter called me today to say that Pete Hegseth, whatever his name is there, in the United States, uh, he's going to give medals to the soldiers who massacred the Sioux women and children at Wounded Knee. That was where I think over 300 Sioux were led into a kind of like a gully, and the army surrounded them with Gatling guns and cannons and massacred them. And the soldiers who did that are going to be decorated by the United States government now. They're going to get medals. So you know, there, it makes me think that there's going to come a point in the future where the soldiers of the IDF are going to be decorated for their bravery for killing children. And it's disgusting for me as a human being to even think about that. But like the Wounded Knee massacre happened, I think, in 1880 or something like that, and and in modern times, they're going the soldiers, the butchers who did it are going to be recognized as heroes of the United States military. Anyway, that's the kind of nonsense the world is right now. But I'd like to hear comments from other people on this committee, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I jump in and read some of them now?
Yep,
Is that a good time?
yep.
Omar, in answer to your question, I think there's a list of, what is the impact on you? That was your question. One saying, so grateful that finally people around the world can see the truth. One comment saying, impact on me. I've had my eyes open to how the world is organized and tilted away from many, many people, people who are just trying to live a good life without hurting others, that it's structured to benefit some while keeping others just treading water. We've grown up and inculcated with Canadian mythologies that romanticize things and hide the horrors behind structures like the RCMP. Another one, in my opinion, Omar, at this time of the spread of social media, there is no excuse as people can see with their own eyes what's happening. Another one, this past 2 years of witnessing this genocide has showed me my white privilege. I used to take breaks from seeing the horrors until I started to feel myself slip away from humanity. When I realized that I was looking away, I saw my privilege staring at me. It was like a fire was lit inside of me, and I have not looked away since. Also, as a teacher, I've continued to speak out to make sure my students know that they can come to me, that I am here and I am in the fight. Another one, this country and a huge proportion of the citizens are racist, point blank. And this country is built on colonialism and genocide. So way too many people have huge blind spots and don't want to believe we are racist and give excuses for occupiers, aka Israel. Did Canada give any support for Palestinians in terms of family reunification for Palestinians? They don't really want to issue papers for Palestinians. Another one, I don't see color is seen here as a positive thing. And then medals for murder, medals for genocide. Our leaders continue to betray, insult, and degrade our souls. And then there were a couple at the top that were before you asked that question, Omar. I'm distressed that Bob Rae, Canada's UN ambassador, stayed and listened to Netanyahu's speech today, whereas most delegates and other countries' ambassadors left the room, so Bibi was speaking to a nearly empty audience. But not Bob Rae. Oh no, not Canada's person. Shameful. And then someone responded to that. I've been deeply disappointed in Rae at the UN, but I'm still holding out hope that the Bob Rae that I admired is still there and will emerge soon. I hope that he stayed in order to digest right from the horse's mouth, in order to respond more appropriately, trying to stay positive. Maybe I'll stop there and let you comment, Albert or Omar, whoever wants to.
I think Chris was raising his hand for something for a while.
Well, I was just going to respond to you, but maybe you're like, I wasn't here at the beginning of, I wasn't able to log on at the beginning, so I'm not sure what the protocol is. So maybe I'll make a comment, but I'll just try and be brief. I just wanted to say that, first of all, first, my name's Christoph Ellie, and I'm a political folk singer and activist. And thank you, Omar, for being here to talk to us today. And I thought, like, when I first joined, it was very, I loved what you said, which was that, when we're out there with other people and that kind of thing, and at protests and that kind of thing, to be inspiring and educational. I thought that was like a beautiful sentiment because it's difficult not to be negative and be, so upset, saddened, and angry about what is happening, So I love that idea of being inspiring and being educational. And then I just wanted to comment briefly on this idea that I feel like Canadians in general, like from the start of this war, people were paralyzed and not able to say anything with this idea that has been sort of taught to us as Canadians that if you say anything against Israel, that it's anti-Semitic. And so I felt like I was like from the first month of this what was happening in Gaza, I was calling it a genocide. I had Jewish people that were friends of mine that I knew that were calling on me to, take my words back, that this wasn't a genocide. And I had a number of conversations with them, and I've continued to call it a genocide from the start because it seemed clear that Israel was intent on killing people in Gaza right from as soon as October 7th happened. They were talking about killing people. They were not talking about bringing people to justice. So I think that people have been scared to come out and say anything because of the anti-Semitic thing. I think that that has changed over time. There's a lot more people that are actually being vocal about these things. But I also feel the last point I'll make is with respect to the media that shapes the narrative. Always, giving the Israeli talking points, always trying to present it as if it's a war, as opposed to, a slaughter from the IDF. And what I would say is that, like, we need to be able to counter that. And I feel like the best way to engage Canadians is to come up with some simple ways of responding to what is happening, like, invoking the fact that the United Nations has now called it a genocide. And I also feel like if we focus on like just providing the rationale for why they should stand up and do something, that we can get people who feel very bad about what's happening in Gaza and want to do something. I think those are the people that we need to focus on, because there are a number of people who just will counter all the time and are either racist or they just, they believe in the Hamas narrative. And we're not going to be able to bring those people into the fold. But I feel like there's a lot of Canadians out there that just need the talking points and the encouragement to be able to feel like they can speak out. Because I feel like there's a lot of people who are really upset about what's happening and would like to do something, but they're paralyzed because they're just not, they feel like they'll be labeled as anti-Semitic. There's also a chill effect of what, people losing their jobs and that kind of thing. So I think that it's important for us to provide those talking points to people who are willing to step forward to be able to, so they can say the UN has called it a genocide. Have you watched Al Jazeera or like Democracy Now! To actually get the true facts of what's happening? So I'll leave it at that. But Omar, thank you for being here today to speak with us.
Thanks, Christoph. I would really would love to see some music, folk music in the future from yourself talking about these matters. Honestly, they would actually the impact on music on people. If you
I did
bring
write a
out
song actually inspired by the students who stood up called Columbia that I wrote in honor of the students standing up and yeah, so
yeah,
and I've been promoting that as much as possible to get the word
I
out.
think more and more we see things that can relate to the regular Canadian, let's say Canadians from a European origin, is when you mix a message with their own history on the music that they understand, and that more like I would love to see country music that is more talking about this genocide. that can make those who love country, of course, not people like me, but mainly those from a European heritage, would actually understand more about this. And that's a role that people like yourself, especially with respectful mindsets, can actually do and take in a very unique way. And that would actually serve us the most for us as immigrants and as Palestinians, because the regular, when you're talking about an outreach, the regular person in general, and in order for them to relate and empathize and build this first hook of a link, they need to see someone that at least that looks like them. This is a human nature. It has nothing to do with racism. This is a human nature. We connect in general and we link with those who look like us. That at least the first impression, right? This is the so when we bring more of these things that can bring more outreach to people from people who already understand the message, and that's one of the most actually, I actually took many of my talking points from Americans and English people who were Europeans heritage, who were building their own argument about Palestine, and actually they brought points that were very, very valid. And I was like, wait a second, I as a Palestinian didn't even see that I can actually defend my cause using those talking points. Because what they researched, right? They researched and they are talking from someone who is an English native speaker, right? So the way, when you talk different languages, you see the idea from different angles, right? For me, as a non-English native speaker, I can always take things from my own perspective, which means the way how my brain was designed is speaking in Arabic. So I see things also from my own narrative as a Palestinian. But when others can actually dig into things as non-Palestinians, non-Arabic main speakers, they can generate their own angles on presenting an idea that can be even easier to digest and more convincing for non-Arabs and non-Brown and non-Palestinians, right? And that's what we have been struggling. And this is actually what brought the huge shift on TikTok. All these people who have been educating people were mainly from Britain and also from the US, all these intellectual minds that started talking about things directly to the listener. Those actually what created the impact, not people like me who have been saying, because regular person cannot relate against with what I'm saying, but people actually who took the full ownership were the non-Arabs, non-Brown, non-Palestinian at the beginning and start defending the matters, right?
Okay, to jump in, can I jump in for a second, Albert?
Yeah, I'd like to just say this about Turtle Island. Was once, there was a time in the past when Turtle Island was a gentle turtle. The indigenous peoples never invented anything specifically to kill another human being. And today, Turtle Island is a place where weapons of mass destruction are built and sent to a country that slaughters children with them. Canada is complicit. The United States is complicit. Britain is complicit. All the so-called Western world has a bloody hand in the slaughtering of innocent children in Gaza, and that's a fact. And it's really just knowing as an indigenous person and thinking that gentle Turtle Island is not gentle anymore, and it's hard to take.
Yeah, beautiful comment. And I hate to jump in with just an admin comment in the middle. But I do want to say, and Christoph, I don't mean to make you feel bad about this because you didn't know anything about it because you missed my instructions. But normally we do keep participants muted and we ask them to type in the chat. And we did that kind of at the very beginning. This is actually our 11th Harmony Circle that we've held. We did this at the beginning because a Palestinian young man, university age man, kind of thought that was the safest way for us to be having these conversations. So normally it's like Albert speaks, the guest speaker speaks, some people from our Harmony team also speak, which I do want to say that Nadia is here now, who is from our Harmony Circle team. Nadia, jump in if you want to. But normally I kind of read the comments and then we go like around a circle again so that Albert and the guest speaker can comment on that. But not to make you feel bad, Christophe, and I didn't want to cut you off either. So, Nadia, do you want to jump in quickly if you're still here? I know you're like in transit right now, so maybe you're not available.
I'm in an airport, but hopefully you only hear me and not everything else going on. Not usually in airports. It's really nice to see all of you, but I'm sorry that I missed the moments when you were speaking. And do want to say that it's, these are, I guess, important moments where we're starting to see a snowball action happening internationally, and that while not moving like anything, the only repercussions at the moment that are being felt there are negative, right? Because revenge is rapid and painful. I won't go into details, but it's been really, really bad the past week. But at the same time, it's cause for hope in the sense that this will have some positive effect at some point. And it is, finally the tide is turning. The international community is taking action of a kind that they like seriously, except for 3 countries that I won't name. This is the first time since 1973. Like it's massive. This is a shift like unlike anything else ever seen since, since before I was born, right? So, this is important, and it's the power of the people. And it's the power of the people that brought about decolonization and in these countries, right? And democracy. And they fought their dictatorships. And the results are that democratic countries who do what their people want them to do act with a good conscience. I mean, we have a saying in Arabic called bel. It means like, may the same be for us one day. Thank you.
Thank you. And so happy you were able to make it and join us. Should I read some more comments now, Albert? Omar, is that good? Okay, because we've got like 6 more. Omar, they took your assignment seriously about writing, yes, how it has impacted you these last 2 years. So a comment here, the immigrant experience in Canada has often involved pressures to assimilate, which historically reinforced white supremacist norms as the dominant culture, a legacy that remains central to Canadian society and culture. Another comment, from the time I moved to Canada from Trinidad in the late 60s, I tried my hardest to fit in quotes. I worked harder, ran faster, skated faster in order to try to be accepted by real Canadians. Like Sonia says, that pressure to assimilate is extremely powerful. Another comment, Omar, another thing you made me think about when you mentioned that we need to continue working on outreach and spreading awareness, not simply marching side by side with the same people all the time. When we take the time to get to know one another, to reach out, a relationship starts to blossom, which builds community. And I've been learning that building community is a way for us to resist this oppression. Another one, people who are curious and want to learn will be most inspired to act in support of the oppressed through art, music, dance, or in short, the arts. We need to uplift and care for and support the artists as they can express what words cannot. Another one, these 23 plus months in, there's no excuse that Canadians don't know the fact that Israel is an apartheid state with a violent history going back 7 decades in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, as well as in the Gaza Strip. Bulldozing Palestinian homes, destroying ancient olive trees, and murdering people on their lands. Canadians seem to think that October 2023 wiped out the historical realities of Israeli privilege and arbitrary imprisonment, even of kids. And then another comment, in quote, civilized Western world. Should I stop there for you to comment and then I can jump back in? Albert, Omar, if anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah, I know for me and my activism since 1988, I've discovered that oftentimes some of the immigrants, and whenever I say immigrants, I'm talking about from white-skinned countries, that they don't feel they're true Canadian until they despise the First Nations with equal vigor as most Canadians do. That's been my experience as a human being living in Canada and Algonquin territory, because you wouldn't believe how many times people with British accents, German accents, Scottish accents, or whatever, and they on the job site thought they could get away with belittling me and teasing me and stuff like this. Here, they found out that they made a big mistake because I don't roll over for nobody. Anyway, that's that's been my experience, and I think whenever the warmongers in Israel are definitely trying to get the people of the world to despise and hate the Palestinians with the same vigor as the people in the war cabinet do in Israel.
I really wanted to comment on this one, because let me tell you something, that some people here, they try to prove to others that they are more Canadians than Canadians themselves, and mainly those people are the immigrants who comes from all these different countries. They call it from the Middle East. I've seen people from Southeast Asia, and to be honest, the worst cops that stopped me and harassed me and been worse and terrible are those who comes from all these countries like Southeast Asia and even Middle Eastern. They are terrible. They are, when I fall with a border police on my way back when I was a PR, it was even a student, I was hoping that I don't fall under someone who is from those countries. Why? I will tell you why. Because and that relates to that we all have assignments to make, right? People from different races have assignments to make. We first of all, we need to work on ourselves as immigrants. Again, as you mentioned, Albert, understanding that the game that we're getting ourselves at, and not falling into this trap of actually trying to prove that we're more Canadians than Canadians themselves, which is the most stupid thing that anyone. But this is the way how they think, right? This is, you come here and you just want to show that you are Canadian. And you would see that one of the most racist politicians in Canada are the ones who even comes from those backgrounds, because that they try to be anti-immigrant, although he's an immigrant and he looks brown and he is Muslim. Like, and I have this personal experience with one of them here called Talib, that they would want to bring the law, right? That's their idea. So, and for them, the spirit of the law is how to be strong and solid. If you even notice the English politics, you would see that the Minister of Immigration, who's been the worst against immigrants, is actually coming from an Southeast Asian culture, right? And she's trying to be more English than the English people of being racist and supreme, which is crazy. But this is the mindset on how this is the mind hack that people tries to show, and also it comes from the immigrant having no self acknowledgement, no self-respect, no identity, because that's what happens when you lose your own identity. You start losing your critical thinking, and then you just want to intimidate. I remember the first time when I came here, I was on the age of 24. I wanted to connect with people, and I was in Victoria, which was 99% of residents are Canadians from a European descent, mostly English, Irish, and so the only place I would go to was Irish Times, if you know, it's in downtown Victoria in Vancouver Island. And I would actually wanted to fit with my friends who at that time were all from Irish descent or English descent and super Canadians. And I remember what I did that time was very actually smart, I think. I went and I memorized all the songs that Irish people sing at that club when they are drunk, because I wanted to connect with them, and that was the only way. So all the old Irish Canadian music with the nice violin melody, I memorized them one by one so I can sing with them when I was drunk during school, right? But it's a way to connect. But maybe this way is a maybe it's a fun way to connect, but others to try to prove that you will be actually humiliating indigenous community to prove that you are Canadian and respected of yourself. I have seen it. And this brings Because if we are going to point hands, we have to do it correctly. I mean, every people and every immigrant is doing things wrong. And this is what, again, the assignment that we have to do. So I really want to point out, but I think what should we point at is we should expose those people. And that is something, this is my biggest problem with, there's a lot of fun things about the Canadian culture, but one of the worst things that I find it very frustrating is people here are either too afraid or too shy or just don't like conflict. And I keep asking the question, why don't you like conflict? Like, we're not holding guns against each other. Like conflict in the Middle East between cousins, we shoot each other and then we take the others to the hospital. I have that, like, it happened in my own family. Like, you know what? We fight and then we go have coffee in the evening. That's it. We don't do, oh, I had a fight with my mom 10 years ago, and since then I'm not talking to her. It's very mind-blowing that people here have zero skills in conflict resolution. And I see it in it's all over the place. It's like, and they also abuse the word of boundaries. Like, oh, you have been crossing my boundary, but it's a way to escape an argument, to escape a fight, which is one of the most healthy things. And I just hope one day it changes, actually, because fighting and arguing and not agreeing is something very, very nice and healthy, as long as you just have enough confidence to come back and say, okay, you know what, I don't accept what you're saying, but I'm not going to judge you. Let's go for coffee. But yeah, I can see to a big extent that immigrants are having a huge amount of work they need to do. Another example is the Minister of Security and Local Affairs in England, who lobbied with the police against demonstrations in England. She was coming from an Indian descent. And it's just crazy, right? The same thing you would say Anita Anand here in Canada, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. She's trying to prove that she's more Canadians than the first settlers by being more oppressing anti-Palestinian and against Palestinians than anybody else. To the fact where people, when they demonstrate in front of her office, she calls the cops. The first thing she does is she calls the cops. So we need to expose these people, whether they're immigrants, whether they come from a European descent. We need to be vocal because, and I think this comes from both sides. We need the wise people here and wise people here to come together and just be very vocal, and not to be afraid. You know, many times I've said something and they were recorded that they were wrong, but you know what? I corrected them. It's fine to make mistakes as long as you are open to recalibrate and recalculate the arguments and think again and have a critical mindset. But many people here, they just don't want to have that. You know, they don't want to have that. I don't know why. But yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, that is a good point and a valid point, that we are not taught how to have conflict or conflict resolution. And of course, somebody just arrived, so now my dog is barking. This is great. Albert, do you want to jump in or do you want me to read more comments?
Yeah, read more comments.
Okay, there was a question way at the beginning for you, Albert, that I skipped that I'm going to go back to now. So, is there a network of Indigenous and other healers? And then in brackets, I know we are all healers to a certain extent, who are working consciously to help heal the planet and all people in these terrible times.
There's not I think the network is the wrong word, but I don't know any Indigenous spiritual advisor who has ever fasted for 4 days and 4 nights in the forest, and I've done so many, many, many times since 1988. Who isn't concerned about the environment, who doesn't communicate with the energy of the trees and the birds and the animals and the rivers and lakes and the winds and those things. It's just who we are. That's what's expected of us. You know, I always say to people that if we imagine a spruce tree in the forest that's been untouched, its bottom branches, those first branches of the tree, they reach out and they touch the earth. And the branches above it don't do that. But to me, those branches of that spruce tree represent us, the First Nations, and how Creator expects us to be in contact, to touch the earth all the time. And that's what I do. You know, all the other branches of that spruce tree, Canada is the stem, and all the branches on top are the immigrants that came here, right up to the top of the spruce tree where there's those little branches, and those are the new immigrants, representing the new immigrants. But I look to the land to bring some common sense into my life. I look to the land to bring some wisdom into my life and to some healing. Like I went about 5 or 6 days ago to sit in the rapids to heal my back pain. And you know, that's the kind of thing that the indigenous people do. We're connected with the land. We speak to the spirit of it. The spirit of it speaks to us.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful question and beautiful answer. Moving back down now, a comment, Albert, when I see Spain sending military aid for the flotilla and Italy and other countries stepping up, I wish Canada was one of the leaders.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah. And then beautiful comment here. And Sylvia and Albert, you have heard of this wonderful woman because we're going to get in touch with her soon. I'm just finishing Project of Heart with my 2 art classes now. And I'm so grateful for the arts and using it as an educational tool of expression and healing. You are a teacher who's inspired me in my own teaching role. And then Sylvia did respond. So Project of Heart is Sylvia's project that she created with her students. So Sylvia answered, I'm thrilled that you are doing this in your class, helping your Canadian children to unlearn racism if they've had the chance to learn it yet, and to get them inspired to be a peace builder and social justice advocates. Good on you. And then a question, Omar, I think for you sort of, is that the key to world peace? If so, may we all learn the songs that we sing when we are drunk. Most used Canadian word is sorry. How can we unfollow this practice? Another comment, I think for some people, ignorance is a blessing. It's easier to believe it's complicated than to get enlightened with the truth. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, but I just want to comment on the last one. It's not a blessing, it's a privilege. Being ignorant is a privilege. And I want to get this example. People say I judge, and I have big eyes, so I judge while being silent. And I just look at people and it's like, you're just judging, right? I was like, yes, I have the full right to judge. And here's an example. When the world first, when the genocide started first, you know, I work at that time in a big company, 750 people. And it's in tech and it's in publishing. So 90% of the employees are white. James comes from an English descent and some Eastern European, those are like very little. But then here's how I judged all my friends who were ignorant, right? Even the ones who are acting like they are third generation, but they were from the Middle East, so they would still have the same way of saying things. I judged them because, and I don't judge them because it's not like I judge them only, but they are too privileged to even go and read a book. Because they are too privileged to even have any kind of reading about any other culture, because for them they would argue, oh, for me as a Canadian, why would I care about what's happening in the Rohingya, for example, the Rohingya genocide? That's the argument. Or why should I even care for what's happening in Palestine, right? But that's privilege. That's a full privilege, because this James has inherited from his dad from England a $10 million worth of a house. He works in sales. He can still write and lift. He hires those people under him who from the Philippines. So he makes his commission nicely. He's too privileged in every aspect, in his job, in his accommodation, in the way how he lives. Doors opens for him easily, right? A very English first name and last name, although his name comes from Palestine, but he didn't even know that fact. Like, he doesn't even know that his name James comes from Palestine, and this is how. And when I told him, he froze because he just didn't want to believe that his name origins come from Palestine and Nazareth. But and he has this big of a cross on his chest. I was like, you know what, James the Baptist? Do you know him? Do you know about his history? Like, he didn't even look like human. But this is privilege, right? But privilege makes people either too smart as intellectuals or too stupid. And you cannot just sit down and not judge those who are too stupid. It's like they will lose respect right away in 5 seconds. but it only tells you, and this is how he came to me after 2 weeks or even a month or two to say sorry for what's happening. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry for what's happening. I mean, it's very complicated what's happening in there, hey? And that made me so furious because at that time I was counting my cousins who were being killed on my screen on hundreds. I have hundreds of like second cousins, and I was counting people who were killed and I lost contact with my family. And then this guy, who's privileged as hell, comes to me and say, "I am sorry, it's just too complicated." Of course, I'm gonna judge not only him, his whole his whole ancestors of his attitudes. Like, dude, you're just too crazy to just come to me with saying it's too complicated. Maybe the minimum you could have done, read any book, and even if it was not about Palestine, but about indigenous communities here, because you cannot know about indigenous history in Canada and Canada history and not relate in milliseconds about what's happening in Gaza and Palestine. I don't even, you know what? I don't want people to read about Palestine, but maybe read about the land that you're staying at. Forget, maybe Palestine is too far for people to read about, or too much of a too complicated, but at least read what happened in your own citizenship that you hold as a history, so you don't look too dumb to actually argue any argument. And that reflects on many people. I had many coworkers with the same attitude, but then should I envy them that they are too privileged? Well, that's another question. I'm not envying people for being privileged. If they worked hard to have the money, congratulations, you worked hard, you deserve it. But inherit a lot of money and have the privilege and also be stupid, this is too much. And it's too much for people to not judge and just look silly at the person.
Albert, do you want to jump in?
Yes, I'd like just to, whenever the slaughtering first began, and after a few months, and I was seeing the people living in worrying about being bombed every day, sniper fire, and watching their children get killed. But on top of that, they had to deal with sewage poisonings. They had to deal, people. Imagine the old people that had sicknesses like high blood pressure and diabetes, maybe, or and children with autism or whatever, and they couldn't access any health clinics because those places were being bombed. They were the war machine. Israel's war machine was bombing bakeries and places where people could go to eat. To be fed, uh, and uh, and I was imagining myself there as a Palestinian and how I would feel. Like I mean, thoughts of suicide would be entering my mind every day, especially like some of my family, Kirsten and my grandchildren and my daughters. Well, I'm imagining them being dead and I'm alive, and and who do I turn to? What do I do? And so my heart really went out to those people. Within like I'm a human rights activist, and I cared about those people right from the get go. But about 3 months into it, they owned my heart and my soul because I just the misery. It was like I couldn't even imagine the misery they were dealing with every day, and on top of it, having to worry about a sniper shooting them dead or their child dead. Anyway, it's just unbelievable how the world this goes on as if nothing is happening. And if people are afraid to be called an anti-Semite, well, tell that to the whenever they cross over, whenever they find themselves in the spiritual world, that they feared being called an anti-Semite instead of doing what was right and speaking out. Oh my goodness, that's not going to go over very well whenever they're confronted with these crimes and the slaughtering of children, the starvation, all these deaths, miserable deaths like that, people are going to have to answer spiritually. That's all I know. That's a fact. Miigwech.
Now, Omar, we only have about 12 minutes left, and I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, but I do want to invite you to tell us about the advocacy you're doing for the reunification if you want to. And if you want to share about your family, you don't have to, though, and how we can help. I mean, I've shared the GoFundMe link in the post that I've done about this, and I can email it out to all participants again following this, but let us know what we can do if that works for you. If you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay too.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. First of all, I really want to say that I am extremely proud and honored to always be around the communities that we have been seeing. I have to acknowledge this fact, and I am extremely amazed by how many communities Canada-wide has been coming together, educating themselves and learning. It's an honor for me to even watch people grow, because that's our job, all of us, to grow. And when I bring all these examples and all these arguments, is not to try to offend anyone or try, but it's a way to make everyone like understand what's happening from an immigrant perspective, because I don't think many people talks about it. Our story with family reunification. So we have all seen, thankfully, Canada welcoming a lot of Ukrainians since the Russia-Ukraine war, right? And we are so happy, and I was amazed, and I myself helped with many settlement organizations toward that. But then when the war in Gaza happened, when the genocide started, I knew from day one that this is going to be a genocide. I knew, and I received the information from many politicians, that this is the perfect opportunity to clean the Gaza Strip. If anyone would read history, this is exactly the same architected way of killing a whole nation and finish them. So I started from day one to try to connect with more Gazans and Palestinians to grief, but also talk about how can we do something similar to this Ukrainian program. And we did organize ourselves, although we were grieving. And we made lobbies, we started talking to politicians, and we reached out to many people, and many Canadians helped us in a huge way. And this could not have happened if our communities did not step into this. Now, what we can do is make sure we continue this to happen. We were able to push the government at that time in 2023 to announce a policy for reunification. But I think that the pushback from the Zionist lobbies on not to bring Palestinians was way stronger than us. So they announced the policy in December 2023 that they will start bringing Gazans to reunify us with them. And then in January 7th, when they did another announcement, they said it's capped for 1,000 people only, which means that there has been a lot of things happening in the back end, a lot of pressure by many lobbies who doesn't want to have Palestinians here. After a lot of pushback from us and advocacy and many Canadians joining, they made it as a cap of 5,000. But the problem is not even here. The problem is from the 5,000, they have not facilitated the evacuation of any single Gazan. So they wanted to do a big PR show saying that we are a country who is fair to everyone, but they never actually implemented this policy. So what we can all do is first follow this page called Gazan Canadians, because it's this is a specific grassroots movement that is only designed for the reunification, nothing else. And that's why we called it Gazan Canadians, because Gazans wants to bring their own family members. It's not that political. And how people can help is to just continue publishing and reaching out to more people and bug their MP, like have a call with your MP on weekly basis. What did you do towards this? And they will lie to you and they will say, oh, I spoke to the immigration minister of immigration. Tell them, I want you to put what you did in public. And this is how you say to the minister, to this MP, that we need you to say it and do it in public. And send an email to the Minister of Immigration, ask them what's happening with this program, why it's not happening, why you're not evacuating people, same as every other country have done so. This would be great. About my family is, I have a lot of family members. My mom used to bring a lot of children thinking that
counting for this day, why people bring a lot of children back home is because they say we are in a war situation. If 5 dies, I still have 2, which is a very crazy way of thinking. But this is why my mom had 7. I have 7 sisters and 1 brother. So in total, we're 9. Those sisters, many of them are married with children. So in total, I have 24 family members in the Gaza Strip. And now instead of me going back to Gaza before the war to settle, and now I am obligated to bring 24 people and save lives and just have to carry this heavy load on myself. So I want everyone, if you can help me maintaining the survival. And when I get the chance to get them to Canada, I will be able to maintain their survival in Canada until they stand on their own feet to be able to, be productive people again and integrate. And thank God they all have great degrees and they all speak somehow. Some speak great English, some don't, but they're all educated, highly educated, and they will be able to integrate in this community. So if you can spread my GoFundMe to your friends, your network, and stay on top of things on that one. Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for sharing it. It's here. Um, share it with people that you know, put it in your social media, send it to your emailing list, and advocate on my behalf. I've been doing it for 2 years. The fact that I lost my job because of that, and I'm in a burnout mode. I don't think I can even work at this moment, although I'm still job hunting, but the market is really tough. But this would help me to continue sending money to them. It costs me between $3,000 to $6,000 a month to keep them alive in the Gaza Strip, which is a lot of money. I have already exhausted many of my savings, and it's already draining in every aspect you can think of. So that would be something that I would be very grateful about. Send it to as many people as you can. It's all about individual funding, right? Crowdfunding requires a lot of people. And that's about it. I would be grateful. And also, just speak on our behalf, we do a lot of meetings as Gazan Canadians to advocate about our cause and bring more people on board. So the minimum you can do, while sitting in your own sofa, just write your MP an email and tell them about this cause and this fact, and just try to stay on top of it with them, calls, meetings, and messages, emailing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Gazan Canadian page, is that on Facebook? Oh, I think you're muted.
Gazan Canadians is on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You will find it everywhere.
Okay. Oh, Christoph found it and put it in. Okay. Okay. 4 more minutes. I'll read 2 more comments. A question. I am curious to know if others in this circle after October 7th had physical responses to the trauma, that trying to hold it down feels like it will just spill over at any time. I felt like that when I was standing in front of my classroom the week following. I wonder how many people simply keep pushing it down, or even worse, don't feel anything at all. A response to that from another participant: I try not to hold it in. I cry when I need to, and more importantly to me, listen to soul-feeding music, and I walk in the forest every day and ask the trees to take my pain while being thankful to them. I found my support system of friends, mostly people I've met in the past 2 years, because most of the friends I've had for the past many decades aren't able or willing to discuss these difficult, painful feelings and thoughts. Christoph shared his song as well in there, and so that's in the chat. And then we have 3 minutes. So I don't know, Albert, if you want to close in the 3 minutes. Omar, are you good to? You're good to be. Okay, so we'll just. It's always rushed, but Albert, we will let you close it.
Yeah, well, it was a very interesting circle we've had. We've had a good. It's good to make new friends and acquaintances, and just to be able to say how we extend loving energies and healing energies to support all the Palestinians wherever they are on this planet. And we wish them well and strength and healing. One of the things that upset me, I think, was a couple of weeks ago, where I read in the newspaper, I think it was, that the IDF soldiers that that did their tours in Gaza, and they are Canadians, and they came back, and now I hear they're going to universities and telling their stories about their experiences in fighting Hamas in Gaza. And I think that should be protested more strongly. And I think people like Omar should be the ones in the universities and talking about to students and to young people about what's going on there. I just wondering how does money get into Gaza when food cannot? It's just wondering that. I definitely think we need to help those people survive this genocide or live to tell about it, and to have their mind not totally broken emotionally, that they will have a life, that they're not going to be so broken that they're not even going to be able to think straight after it ends. Because there's, to me, I don't see an end yet in sight. Like, I know what Nadia said about the that there's things are shifting, and they are, but to me, the voices of the world leaders aren't strong enough yet. They need to say it direct, that they're going to sanction, that they're going to stop being complicit, and boycott Israel products and everything in the future from their countries, and arrest Netanyahu should he ever dare to step foot in any of those countries. That's what I think, anyways. So all the best, everybody.
I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'll send an email out with all the links that have been put in the chat, so everyone will have that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll be in touch again, Omar. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Omar.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Honored to be with all of you. Thank you.
And let us know the next time you're in Ottawa, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we should meet you in person.
Yeah, that would be good.
It would be my honor. Thank you.
Yeah. So many beautiful thank yous in the comments. I don't think anyone wants to leave.
They're thinking about so many things and how we really should try to get a project of heart started for Palestine.
Yeah.
It really has to happen, and the sooner the better. And I just thought of that when
Yeah.
thinking of the other teacher that's on the line here. Anyway, thank you for being with us. This is hard stuff to talk about, but just the fact that you've taken this time for us is I feel very honored that you've graced us with your company. And Albert, it's always such a pleasure to hear you talk. Lindsay, thank you so much for organizing this again. You're tireless in it, and for everyone who's with us. Bye for now.
Bye for now, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, Omar. Good night, everybody.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.